They told me to leave it alone, that every marriage has storms, that a mother should not interfere. But when I reached their house that night, the porch light was off and the snow had buried the welcome mat. Through the front window, I saw my daughter, my sweet Lily, sitting on the cold tile in her silk dress, mascara running like melted ink, clutching the hem of her gown as if it were the last thread holding her together. I remember whispering her name. She didn't answer. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. That was the moment I stopped believing in patience. That was the night I realized that silence protects the wrong people. Because when I opened that door, I didn't come as a guest or a mother-in-law. I came as the storm itself. And by morning, nothing in that house or in our lives would ever be the same again. Part 1. The Call. Christmas Eve 2009. The kind of cold that makes the air taste metallic. I had just turned off the oven when the phone rang. One of those old cordless ones that still clicked when you picked it up. The smell of cinnamon rolls floated through the kitchen, mingling with pine from the tree I decorated earlier. On the radio, Bing Crosby was crooning "I'll Be Home for Christmas." I smiled without meaning to. Louie loved that song when she was little. She used to twirl in her socks across this same kitchen floor, pretending the rolling pin was a microphone. Back then, she used to tell me, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to have a house just like this. Warm, loud, full of people who never stop loving each other." But dreams change when hearts are too young to know their worth. The phone rang again. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and pressed the green button. Hello? For a second, all I heard was breathing. Soft, uneven, fragile. Mom? It was Lily. But not the Lily I knew. Her voice was thinner, trembled on every syllable. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" The pause that followed felt like a lifetime balanced on one word. Can you come get me?" My heart stopped. I didn't ask where she was. I didn't ask why. A mother knows when something has broken. "Of course," I said. "Stay right there. I'm on my way." I didn't even put on a coat. I grabbed my keys, slipped into the driver's seat, and backed out of the driveway while the garage door was still rising. Snow scattered like feathers behind me. The world outside was silver and silent, the kind of night when time itself holds its breath. As I drove, memories crowded the windshield. The day of her wedding, her white dress catching sunlight, her eyes full of hope. I'd told myself then that she was safe, that she had chosen a man who would protect her. Now, every mile between us felt like an accusation. When I reached the edge of town, the houses thinned into long stretches of fields. The road curved toward the old Wilkins estate, their family home. Large, pretentious, sitting on a hill as if looking down on everyone else. The Wilkinses were the kind of people who smiled through their teeth and kept score in everything. From the moment Lily married Daniel, I'd sensed the quiet disdain. My daughter, the small-town girl with hand-me-down grace, daring to step into their polished world. I parked near the gate. The lights were out, except for a faint orange glow from a single upstairs window. The air smelled of frozen roses from the bushes by the porch. I knocked once. No answer. Again, louder this time. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing Mrs. Wilkins, wrapped in a robe, her expression the kind polite people use when they want you to feel ashamed for existing. "Mrs. Thompson," she said coolly, "it's very late." "I'm here for my daughter," I replied. Her eyes flicked behind me, as if expecting an audience. "She's resting. It's been an emotional evening. I'm not leaving without her." Her lips tightened. "Perhaps tomorrow would be better. Daniel, where is she?" The force in my voice startled even me. Years of holding my tongue, of trying to keep the peace, snapped like a brittle branch in the cold. A soft sound answered from the hallway. A sob, faint but unmistakable. "Lily?" I pushed past Mrs. Wilkins before she could protest. The house smelled of expensive candles and something else, wine maybe, or bitterness. And then I saw her, sitting on the marble floor in her wedding gown. Yes, she was still wearing it, as though time had stopped mid-celebration. The veil lay beside her like a torn cloud. Her hands were trembling. "Mom." I dropped to my knees. "What happened?" She shook her head, eyes darting toward the staircase. "He told me to leave. He said I embarrassed him, that his parents were right about me. They said I wasn't good enough, that I'd ruined their evening, their reputation." Her voice broke. "I don't even know what I did wrong." The words cut deeper than any scream. Behind us, I heard slow footsteps descending the stairs. Daniel appeared, still in his tuxedo, tie undone, face flushed with arrogance. He didn't even look ashamed. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, as if greeting a neighbor at a grocery store, "you really shouldn't barge into other people's homes." I stood, positioning myself between him and my daughter. Other people's homes don't throw their wives out in the middle of the night. "She's being dramatic," he said, rubbing his temple. "It was a small argument. She overreacted." "Overreacted?" My voice rose. "She called me crying. She's sitting on your floor wearing her wedding dress. That's not an overreaction. That's heartbreak." His mother's voice sliced through the silence. Perhaps this discussion would be more civil in the morning. But civility had long left that house. I turned to Lily. "Get your things. We're leaving." Daniel laughed under his breath. "Running back to mommy again? Figures." The sound that came out of me then wasn't anger. It was something older, something primal. I took Lily's hand and pulled her up. "No, Daniel, she's going home, to people who remember what love is supposed to feel like." We walked toward the door. No one tried to stop us. Outside, the snow had started again, soft flakes melting on Lily's cheeks. As I opened the car door for her, she whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." "For what?" "For choosing wrong." I brushed her hair from her face and kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart, you chose to love. That's never wrong. What's wrong is when someone mistakes love for ownership." I started the engine, the headlights cutting through the falling snow. The house behind us disappeared into the night, swallowed by white. Inside the car, neither of us spoke. The road home stretched endlessly, a ribbon of forgiveness winding through the dark. She fell asleep with her head on the window, and I drove, one hand on the wheel, one hand gripping the edge of hope. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of her pain. It was only the beginning. The heater in the car rattled the whole way home, struggling against the cold. Lily slept fitfully, her head bumping against the glass each time we hit a patch of ice. Every few miles she murmured Daniel's name and then went quiet again. I kept my eyes on the road, trying to ignore the voices in my head, the questions, the what-ifs, the guilt. Had I missed the signs? Had she been calling for help long before that night? When we finally turned onto Cedar Lane, the old streetlights hummed like they were whispering secrets. I parked in front of our house, killed the engine, and just sat there. The silence was so heavy that I could hear my own pulse. "Sweetheart," I said softly, touching her arm, "we're home." She blinked awake, dazed, mascara crusted under her lashes. The girl who used to fill this house with laughter looked 10 years older than she had that morning. I helped her inside. The warmth from the radiator wrapped around us, carrying the familiar scent of cinnamon and pine. For a second, she looked like a child again, safe, small, searching my face for permission to fall apart. "Go upstairs," I whispered. "Take a hot shower. I'll make tea." She nodded and disappeared down the hall. I stood in the kitchen, watching the kettle fill, listening to the old pipes groan, and suddenly the quiet wasn't comforting anymore. It was accusatory. The tea boiled over. I turned off the burner and leaned on the counter. Shaking. Everything about tonight felt like a warning I hadn't heard soon enough. When Lily came back down, she was wearing one of my flannel shirts. Her hair was damp, her face bare. She looked fragile, but composed in the way people do when they're too tired to keep pretending. I handed her the mug. "Talk to me, honey." She took a sip, then stared at the steam. "It started small," she said. "Little things, comments, looks. He said I was sensitive." His mother said I should be grateful he married someone like me. My stomach twisted. She took over everything. How I dressed, who I saw, what we ate. Daniel just let her. Sometimes he joined in. Sometimes he didn't say anything at all. And when I tried to tell him it hurt, he told me to stop creating drama. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her hands over her eyes. I thought tonight would fix it, she said. Their family Christmas party. I baked pies, decorated the house. I tried to make it perfect. But his mother found a stain on the tablecloth and said I was careless. Daniel laughed. He said, "Maybe Mom's right. You're not cut out for this." Everyone heard him, Mom. They all laughed. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. And then he told me to go upstairs if I couldn't take a joke. So I did. I packed my bag, but he followed me. He said leaving would make me look crazy, that his parents would never forgive me, that I'd embarrass him. She swallowed hard. He took my phone, Mom, said I didn't need to talk to anyone, that I was overreacting again. My chest tightened. I wanted to march back to that mansion and tear every lock off its doors. "How did you call me?" I asked. She gave a shaky smile. The landline in the hallway. He didn't think I'd remember it still worked. I set my mug down before my hands betrayed me. "He won't control you anymore, Lily. You're safe here." But the words felt small, almost dishonest. Because safety isn't something you can declare, it's something you have to rebuild, brick by fragile brick. She nodded, eyes drifting toward the window. Outside, snow fell under the porch light, wet tiny shards of forgiveness. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the hallway light on, listening for her footsteps above me, the way I used to when she was a child afraid of thunder. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a memory walking past. Around 3 a.m., I went upstairs to check on her. The door was half open. She was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a quilt, staring at the framed wedding photo on the dresser. Daniel's smile in that picture looked like someone I had never met. I sat beside her. "You don't have to keep that, you know." She shook her head. "I keep looking at it, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Was it that I loved him too much? Or that I believed him when he said he loved me? Sweetheart, love isn't supposed to make you smaller." She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I think I forgot who I was, trying to make him happy." Her words stayed with me long after she fell asleep. Morning came pale and quiet. I brewed coffee and called her father, Mark. He and I hadn't spoken much since the divorce, but some things erase old distances. "Lily's home," I said. He didn't ask why, only said, "Tell her I'm coming over." By the time he arrived, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, hair tied back, trying to act fine. Mark hugged her without a word. Sometimes silence says everything. He finally turned to me. "You're planning to talk to Daniel?" "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants to drive over there and demand answers. The other part just wants to let it all rot where it stands. Mark nodded. "Let her breathe first, then decide." Lily spent the next few days moving through the house like a ghost. I watched her rearrange old books, fold laundry that didn't need folding, cook meals she didn't eat. The bruises weren't on her skin, they were in her silence. On the fourth night, I found her outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, phone in her hand. "You thinking about calling him?" I asked. She flinched. "He texted earlier, said he misses me, that his mom exaggerated. He wants to talk." I exhaled slowly. "And you?" She stared at the snow-covered street. "I want to believe him. I know I shouldn't, but part of me still hopes he'll show up and say he's sorry." I knelt beside her. "Hope is a beautiful thing, Lily, but when you give it to someone who keeps breaking it, it stops being hope. It becomes denial." She nodded, tears welling again. "How did you do it when Dad left?" I smiled sadly. "I cried, then I cleaned the whole house, and when that didn't fix it, I learned to live with the crack instead of pretending it wasn't there." 2 days later, a letter arrived, written in Daniel's sharp handwriting. He didn't apologize. He rationalized, blamed stress, misunderstandings, family pressure. He wrote that he needed time, but hoped she'd remain graceful. graceful. That word burned. Lily tore the letter in half, then in quarters, until only shreds remained. She dropped them into the fireplace. The flames caught fast, curling the paper into black petals. "Good," I whispered. Let him turn to ash. She watched the fire until it died down. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were steady. "Mom, can we go away for a few days? Somewhere quiet?" "Anywhere you want." So we packed what we needed: 2 suitcases, her sketchbook, my camera. And by dusk, we were on the road heading north, toward the cabin by Lake Shelby we used to rent when she was a child. The drive was long, the kind that heals by distance alone. By the time we reached the cabin, the lake was frozen over, a mirror for the sky. Inside, the air smelled like pine and old stories. We lit a fire, made soup, and sat on the rug watching sparks dance up the chimney. For the first time in weeks, Lily smiled. Not the practiced smile she'd worn for others, but a real one that started in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not asking me to forgive him." I reached across and squeezed her hand. "Some people don't deserve forgiveness yet. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop waiting for an apology." Outside, the wind rose, brushing against the windows like a sigh. The world felt both wounded and alive, like us. The morning after we arrived at the cabin, the world was white and still. Snow had fallen overnight, soft and heavy, covering every broken branch and uneven stone in a hush so complete it almost felt like mercy. Lily was still asleep when I stepped outside. I pulled my coat tighter and stood on the porch watching the lake. Beneath the ice, I could almost hear the muted groan of water trying to move, trapped by the cold. That's how grief feels, I thought. Still. But restless underneath. I made coffee the way she liked it. Too much cream, a sprinkle of cinnamon. When she came downstairs, her hair was tied in a messy bun, her face pale but rested. She smiled when she saw the mug waiting. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said. "Morning, Mom." She wrapped her hands around the mug and stared into it as though she could read her future in the steam. We spent that day walking by the lake, talking about everything except Daniel. I asked her about her art. She used to draw people's faces from memory. "I can't draw anymore," she admitted quietly. "Every time I try, his face shows up." "Then draw something that has no face," I said. "Draw the wind or the sound of snow falling." She laughed softly. "You always say things like that." "Like what?" "Things that make sad people believe the world still loves them." I smiled. "Maybe it does. It just hides sometimes." That night, we built a fire again. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke. Lily took out her sketchbook and drew while I read an old novel. For a few hours, we almost looked like two ordinary women instead of one heartbroken daughter and one worried mother. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She didn't move at first. The sound sliced through the quiet like a blade. I set my book down. "It's him, isn't it?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Don't answer," I said gently. But she did. His voice came through the small speaker like a ghost she wasn't ready to let go of. He sounded calm, careful, rehearsed. He told her he missed her, that things had gotten out of hand, that his family never meant to hurt her. He said he'd been drinking too much, thinking too much. He wanted to meet, just to talk. I watched her face change, pain softening into something dangerously close to hope. She covered the receiver and whispered, "He says he wants to drive up here." "Lily?" "Just to talk, Mom, that's all." I stood, shaking my head. People who break you don't deserve to choose when they get to talk. Her eyes welled. "Maybe I just need to hear him say it's over, from his own mouth." I sighed. "Then at least let me be there." She agreed. But when I woke in the middle of the night to the sound of the front door creaking, her coat was gone. The world outside was snow and silence. I saw tire tracks in the driveway that hadn't been there before. My chest tightened. I called her phone. No answer. Again, nothing. It was nearly dawn before I saw headlights through the trees. Relief hit me first, then confusion. A police car. 2 officers stepped out, their faces somber. "Mrs. Evans?" one asked. "Yes," I said, my throat suddenly dry. "It's about your daughter." The words that followed will haunt me until my last breath. They'd found the car halfway down a ravine on the old Shelby Road. The one that curved dangerously near the frozen creek. The storm overnight had made the road slick. She must have lost control on the bend. She died before the car caught fire. They said it quickly, like they were trying to rip off a bandage before the pain settled in. I remember shaking my head, telling them they were wrong, that she'd promised she'd never leave without telling me, that she'd said she'd be right back. One of the officers handed me her phone. The screen was cracked, still faintly glowing. The last message she'd sent was unsent, half-typed. "Mom, that was all." The days after the funeral blurred together. People came with casseroles, flowers, apologies. They said things like, "She's in a better place," and "At least she's at peace now." But no one asked where that left me. Her father, Mark, came and stayed for a week. We talked in whispers, as if speaking too loudly might disturb her sleep. He said he wanted to sue the county for not maintaining the road. I told him, "You can't sue fate." Everywhere I looked, I saw her, in the mug on the counter, in the jacket still hanging by the door. Even her laughter seemed to echo in the air, like a sound the world refused to let die. A week later, I went back to the cabin. The snow had melted into patches of mud and ice. The air smelled of thawing earth and memory. Inside, the ashes from our last fire were still in the hearth. Her sketchbook lay on the table, half filled. I opened it. The last drawing was of the lake, frozen, endless, under a dark sky. But in the corner, almost hidden, she had drawn 2 figures. One standing on the ice, the other watching from the shore. Underneath, she had written, "I wish I could come home." I sat on the floor for hours, holding that sketchbook, feeling the ache pulse through me in waves. That night, I dreamed of her, standing at the edge of the lake, her hair catching the wind. She smiled and said, "Mom, it's okay now. I found the way home." When I woke, tears were already on my face, and for the first time since that night, I whispered back, "I know, sweetheart, I know." Spring came late that year, the kind of spring that hesitates, unsure if it's welcome after so much cold. The trees outside my window were slow to bloom, their branches like bones, remembering what it meant to be alive. It had been 3 months since Lily's accident, 3 months since the night I lost my only child. And yet, some mornings, I still set 2 plates on the table before catching myself. Some nights, I still left the hallway light on because she hated the dark. People tell you grief is a storm. They're wrong. It's a season. It doesn't rage and end. It lingers quietly, changing shape, teaching you how to live with the absence of sunlight. One afternoon, I went to the post office in town. I hadn't checked my box in weeks. Inside were bills, circulars, and one thin envelope with handwriting I recognized immediately. Daniel. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world around me dimmed. I stepped outside, sat on the bench by the window, and stared at the envelope in my trembling hands. It was postmarked 2 days after the crash. The letter had been delayed, weather maybe, or fate. Either way, it had arrived now when I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it said. I tore it open. "Dear Mrs. Evans, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. What happened that night was never supposed to happen. Lily called me. She said she wanted to see me one last time. I told her not to drive. that the roads were too dangerous, but she said she was already on her way. I swear to you, I never meant for her to get hurt. There's not a day I don't replay that night in my head, every word, every breath. I waited at the diner until closing, thinking maybe she'd changed her mind. Then I saw the sirens on the highway. I loved her. I know you don't believe me, but I did. In my own weak, broken way. She deserved someone better, someone brave. I'll carry this guilt for the rest of my life. Daniel. I folded the letter carefully as though gentleness might undo its weight. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, feeling the wind lift the edges of the paper. The last words of the boy who took everything from me without meaning to. That night, I drove to the lake one last time. The snow had melted completely now, revealing the rough gravel path Lily and I had walked that first day. The cabin looked smaller, quieter, as if it too had been holding its breath all this time. Inside, I found her jacket still draped over the chair, the one she used to wear on her morning walks. I pressed it to my chest, inhaling the faint trace of her perfume, lilac and rain. Then I sat at the table and wrote her a letter. Not to say goodbye, I couldn't bear that word, but to tell her the things I'd never said. My dearest Lily, the world feels smaller without you. Every sunrise looks the same. Every song sounds hollow. But I'm learning to live in the quiet places you left behind. I see you in the way the morning light hits the window, in the laughter of girls your age at the coffee shop, in the whisper of the wind that sometimes sounds like your voice. I still blame myself for not waking up that night in time. I still wish I had stopped you, held you, told you that no closure is worth your life. But I also know this, you were brave. Too brave for this world sometimes. And maybe, just maybe, you found the peace here that the rest of us are still searching for. I'll keep the cabin the way you left it. The sketchbook, the jacket, the mug with the chip on the side. Because I need to believe that love doesn't vanish. It just changes form. Love always, Mom. When I finished, I folded the letter and tucked it inside her sketchbook, between two drawings of the lake. Outside, the sky had begun to glow pink and gold. The first real dawn of spring. I stepped onto the porch and closed my eyes. For a moment, I could almost feel her beside me. The soft rustle of her hair, the warmth of her small hand slipping into mine. And then, the wind carried something across the lake. Faint, like a whisper. It's okay, Mom. I smiled through the tears. I know, baby, I know. That night back home, I finally turned off the hallway light. Not because I'd stopped missing her, but because I'd learned that love doesn't live in the places we keep lit. It lives in the shadows we learn to walk through. And sometimes, that's enough.